Hello. We would like to welcome you all to What is Essential Tremor? An unknown disability. Why is it unknown? Well, I'll tell you, but first I want to introduce this wonderful occupational therapist, Lisa Beauchamp, who is from St. Teresa Hospital, and I've been working with her. And is it St. Teresa Hospital, Ascension Via Christi?
It's Ascension Via Christi, yeah.
Okay.
And then we have, it's a therapy center, I guess they call it, on the second floor.
And I am the support group leader for here in Wichita for Essential Tremors. I knew I picked the right title when I mentioned to one of the librarians here that in my life I've been asked, what illegal drugs am I on? If I have Parkinson's, and I've been called some not so nice names. And then I met doctors and nurses and other people who haven't heard of essential tremor. And this librarian's response was, yeah, I haven't heard of it either. So that made me think I did pick a good title. Now, this is in conjunction with this book, Sitting Pretty by Rebecca Taussig. And there are many references in her book that I can relate to. But before we do that, let's start with the basics about what is essential tremor. I don't know what's coming up there, so you have to tell me. Okay, we do know it's a neurological condition characterized by shaking, the tremors, with the unusual first word of essential. Now, I can tell you, anybody that has essential tremors wishes it wasn't essential. And they keep saying, why do they call it that? So I looked it up. In a medical context, essential refers to a symptom that is isolated and does not have a specific underlying cause, if that makes any sense. This tremor has no known cause, and it can affect different parts of your body. Now, we're going to be pretty open here today. So if you have ET or a feeling of ET, you shout out. If you have shakiness in any parts of these body, in your body, by your right hand, anybody have it just in their right hand? Okay. Left hand only. Both hands.
I guess I should have done both hands.
If you have voice tremor, if your head tremors, your legs, or all over. And inside tremor can also happen, especially when you're anxious. So that is very, very common. Now that we've got that out and open, and everybody's seen you hold up your hands. I don't think anybody saw you hold up your hands. Let's find out how essential tremor affects your daily life. And if I'm in the way, I'm sorry. Okay, the other way. All right. One of the major things people gripe about when they have essential tremor is trying to go to a restaurant or a buffet. Because, first of all, if you're in a restaurant, food flies, you get food on your clothes. I have some shirts here, and they all look really nice, except they all have food particles on them. There's also, when you're in a buffet, you're trying to get food on that plate, it doesn't happen. So, those are two things. The next thing is writing, especially writing signatures. I used to hate it when you walk in a classroom or in a club group and they'd say, go ahead and sign in. Ooh, that just scared me to death. Also at weddings and funerals, they have the books, and that's what he was there for. So, then typing. Okay, typing's bad enough, but then when you gotta do passwords that you can't look back and see what's wrong with it, I'm making this sound really sad, but it's not. You just learn to go through life with all of this. And then singing, you get vibrato that you don't really want to have. But it also means you can't even hit certain tones in your voice. Actually, it's anything requiring fine motor skills. For an example, I said turning a page in a book, hitting a doorbell, sometimes you can, or the bell in the elevator. Actually, it's reaching for anything away from your body. She's nodding yes because she knows she's seen it in me. But eating is the worst. So this video, now here comes the fun part, getting the video to work. Oh, that's the
I
TV.
can do it one-handed. Used to hold my hand. Trying to food. It's embarrassing.
It was fun trying to get it to my mouth then.
Okay, you think I should be really skinny so they can't get the food in my mouth?
New kind of diet.
I can't even get it off the plate. I'm supposed to stop. The fork is supposed to stop. Ah, I got food. Oh, shit. Oh, well. Okay. Pretty bad when just trying to eat breakfast makes you want to cry.
Did you read the instructions before you started?
Yes,
It said take a couple of deep breaths before you start.
yeah, I did. I'm just trying to get it to my mouth though. There's gotta be something better than this. There's gotta be a lot of people who are worse shape than me.
Was that your first time trying that particular utensil?
Yes.
Correct, yeah, these
The
are,
problem
You might
is,
want to explain what that fork is.
my hands are shaking, I get it to my mouth and my head's shaking.
you get so tired.
So this seemed a little better, but every morning I start out like the other.
Yeah, and in the morning it's much worse. I haven't even watched this in a long time. There's a reason I don't
Pile
watch.
of nerves.
Okay, and see this cup, we bought that specially for Tremors. It was from a craft show. But even that I had to be careful with. That fork that I was holding is a special fork for this, but in many ways it didn't work for me. And I know people, it has worked for other people, but it didn't work for me.
I can get it over.
So what is that?
Oh, you can't wash it.
Yeah, it's supposed to counteract it. The
Is it
tremors.
weighted?
It's weighted, but it's also don't we have
If
to
you charge
charge
it
it?
up.
Yeah, you
If
have to charge
electronic
that, and
fork,
then
it's
the
what it is.
front, the back kind of wiggled with your hand, and the
That's the
front
word.
was supposed to stay steady.
One.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
but
think I've got it done. And then I go to pull
Like-
it away from my mouth and everything just jingles.
you didn't hear my cuss word in there, so that was pretty good. Now we'll go back to to this. That's kind of Debbie Downer kind of stuff. Sorry, Debbie. Who can develop essential tremor? Well, there's 10 million people in the United States. It's one of the most common neurological conditions in the United States. An additional 15 million in the world, so 25 million in the world. And that's just the reported cases. It affects both men and women, so there's no discrimination there, and those of all races. It can start at any age. We tend to think of shaking as being like our grandmothers would have had shaky hands, something, but in reality, I've heard of people who have 2-year-olds whose hands are shaky, and they're already looking at medication for them, and 80-year-olds just getting diagnosed. So, Dave, now what's next? Okay, what we do know of essential tremor is familial or genetic, or maybe not. But the reason, how many of you who said you had essential tremor have family members here? Oh, that's funny. It's my daughter and my sister. So, do you know if any of your family members? But it could be that they have hidden, that they're embarrassed, that they're staying away from family because they're not going out to eat. So these next few points are very important for mental health because it can be a cause of anxiety. And for every person with essential tremors, anxiety is a part of that. Isolation, when they won't go anywhere, and depression comes in. Drinking can alleviate tremors in a certain amount, but you don't want to get too much or it gets worse through alcoholism. And jobs have been lost because of it. I go online and I see the people who are writing about 20-somethings who can't find a job or keep a job, and it just makes my heart hurt. Many have to retire early because of essential tremor. I felt I retired early, but it was the best thing I ever did. And ET has many faces for different people, but we do know one thing, it is progressive. So if you start out, especially when you're young, it may level off for many years and then gets worse as the person ages. Becca, you got anything to say about that?
I was gonna say mine has gotten worse, as I've gotten older. Whereas before, when I was younger, I only needed medication occasionally. Now I take it daily.
That's my daughter who has had to go through this with me, and now she's going through it with her. So then the next thing we think about, if we get it diagnosed, what happens? It's best diagnosed by a neurologist who specializes in movement disorders, but mine was actually diagnosed by my general practitioner. The few things that they will do to start out, well, they've got to rule out other causes. You talked about Parkinson's, that's a major thing they look at. And they'll check your medical history to see what happened in previous. And then you'll draw the Archimedes spiral. If you don't know what that is, do any of you kids know what that is? You haven't had that in school yet? Okay, I'll show you in a little bit. And then they start out usually with, like she said, prescription, and then as time goes on, it may be, maybe that we'll do other processes. But first we start out with primidone and propranolol. Those are the go-to drugs right now. Although propranolol is actually a high blood pressure medicine. It's helped keep my blood pressure down, but if you're taking others, they may have you go off of the others and then go on to propranolol. I started out at 10 milligrams just whenever I needed it, kind of like what she said. Then I went all the way to 360 milligrams a day. and that's when we decided it wasn't helping at all. So, okay, here's the Archimedes spiral. Let's see. I want to show you this, because what they will have you do is draw in the spiral, and then draw between some lines, and then write your name. This is really a horrible thing to show, but can you pass that around?
Explain what that is.
And that is to test if you have essential tremors. If you cannot keep your writing in the lines and the straight and your name written correct. Now that was written when I was actually in a procedure. And so I was writing upside down, freehand, with my hand not holding on to anything else. Now, like you haven't heard it now, you get to hear my story. And that goes along with Rebecca's book. She explains her story. So, when I was 10, puberty hit, and so did tremors. Here's a short video produced by KU Medical Center to highlight what happened. Looky there, you're John.
I was 10 years old. I was walking in a park at a field trip at school, and I was walking back to the bus, and all of a sudden my hand just started jiggling.
That was nearly 6 decades ago, and Rita Sievert remembers it like it was yesterday.
I thought a monster had gotten into me.
Years would pass, school, marriage, even children came, before Rita, around the age of 35, would decide to face the symptoms she had tried so hard to hide.
Definitely the shaky hands, but also just anxiety. I would be afraid to go anywhere where I needed to hold a cup or be out in front of people.
Doctors would eventually diagnose Rita with what's called essential tremor, a condition that affects the nervous system and causes shaking, usually of the hands. You can see here just how bad it had gotten over the years. Rita researched options and chose the University of Kansas Health System and neurosurgeon Dr. Jennifer Chang.
Dr. Chang is the best. They told me she was a perfectionist, and I agree, and I think that just calms you down when you know somebody is going to make sure they get it absolutely right.
Dr. Chang used focused ultrasound, a minimally invasive procedure that targets and destroys a specific area of the brain that causes tremor in the hand.
I had my first hand done in 2021, right during the pandemic.
The procedure reduced Rita's tremor by 95%, and recent FDA approval cleared the way for her other hand.
I play piano. I'm sewing again.
Finally getting Rita back to the life she had long put off.
How was it? Okay. I married the most wonderful man. He doesn't know. He became my caregiver, and he never thought of me as his shaky mess. He backed me up when I would ask for help, and that could be difficult because I would be so frustrated I would throw things. Those things put some power in my hand, and so he had to make a no throwing policy in the house. But I went around that by taking my phone outside and throwing it in the grass. Because then I knew I had to throw it. That's why it's got a crack in it now. At age 35 in 1992, when we came back to the States, I went to Dr. Scott Kardatsky, and he was my general practitioner. And luckily, he had just read an article on benign or familial tremor. They hadn't even decided on a specific name for it. I was so happy. I wasn't alone. I wasn't crazy, and I didn't have a monster inside of me. Now let's go back to Rebecca's book because I want to talk about it as a disability. Rebecca Taussig presents several references that essential tremor people can identify with. It's important to realize ET is a bona fide disability. She says, the 1990 American Disabilities Act highlights that disability is a far-reaching word that can attach itself to all sorts of bodies. Many of them appear perfectly able or are exceptionally able in one area, but not as much in the other. And that kind of makes us feel a little better. So go ahead. She also has some other quotes that I've included to compare to ET people. She said, I still spill a lot of coffee. Actually, I didn't drink much coffee until I was ready to retire. And it was because I would be alone. But Lisa was nice enough to bring her sippy cup, and thank heavens they're popular now. So we can not look like we're children and drinking out of a sippy cup. The second one is, she says, it's stigma, isolation, erasure, misunderstanding, skepticism, and ubiquitous inaccessibility. For ET persons, the inaccessibility may be trying to sign in on a computer, like they have at the airport. Oh my gosh, you should have seen me trying to type in numbers from our flight. Or using a phone to access a public event when you go through the gate, like at a baseball game or a concert. Even Disney World access, when they have you put your card with one hand and you put your finger on with the other hand. He had to hold my hands so they wouldn't be shaking as I did this. Now she says her body has no trace of disabilities. That quote comes from her childhood daydreams. And my own therapist noticed that when I described my life, I left out all references to ET. I said, well, wasn't I pretty in those growing up years? Because there was an insecurity of what can I do in my life that I can be shaky with. But I also felt furious with myself for failing to keep up to manage the basic tasks of all my peers seemed so able to handle. These friends from childhood over here, they know how hard a time I had just trying to keep up. I remember writing sentences in class, and luckily I had a good memory because the teacher would go ahead and say the next sentence, and there's no way I could keep writing. So I remembered it, and before we had to hand them in, I'd go back and add all the words that were supposed to be in there. But I didn't do it like that. I was too quick. I had to do it slow. And this is a different quote that doesn't involve me so much, but it is a fact that a person with a disability is significantly less likely to be gainfully employed or even employed. In my younger years, computers weren't so much a part of school or the work world. I was able to get a bachelor's degree in accounting, and the first years were even before they had Excel. Casey, I did. I did accounting without Excel. I first encountered computers for work in England in 1987, where we were stationed, and I worked in an accounting area. I was lucky the computer was in a back room, so nobody could see me shaking. When we came back, I was definitely behind the curve on the computer programs, so I decided to get a master's degree in library science because I knew they were starting to use computers, and I wanted to expand my computer knowledge, but also I couldn't break many books, so if I dropped them, there was no problem, I could just pick them up. But the neatest part of that is I was introduced to a new thing, and that was the internet. I also started doing online research then, and way back when, about that time, I found out about deep brain stimulation. There's 2 processes they do, and they realized that the ET was located in our thalamus, which is deep inside our brains. And deep brain stimulation controls ET by electrically blocking some of the brain signals by going from a small hole in your head, and it blocks them that cause the movement symptoms. It is done by inserting wires, through a small hole in your skull from the thalamus to a battery placed under your skin. Results vary, but for most, their tremors are reduced tremendously. It can take a few times for the battery to work correctly, but when successful, the patient can control it now through their phones. So that's something, if you think you have essential tremors, you can look into. And that's been around about 30 years, so we can go to the next one. And this is the other one called focused ultrasound. That's been around about 15 years, but for a long, long time in the United States, it wasn't even available in the United States. We thought we were going to have to go to Switzerland, didn't we? And it was premiered in Israel. It's a non-invasive way to use ultrasound to stop the essential tremors. It requires 2 procedures, 1 for each side of the head, and they have to be done at least 9 months apart. The most dramatic parts for a patient prior to laying in that noisy MRI machine, which is a special machine just for essential tremors and for focused ultrasound. The most scary parts are having your head shaved, and yeah, my hair does grow back, and it did grow back, and fixing the head halo to your skull using screws. It's not easy, but after 2 to 3 hours, the effect will be immediately and hopefully life-changing. Now, they do stop the MRI every so often, and that's when they have you draw these. So, even though we saw the first one was really bad, second, third, fourth, fifth ones weren't too good, the 6th one came out to be really good. And so that's when they said, oh, it was a success. So if you want to see that again, it's up here. For most users, the side effects are the balance issues. And now since I did it on my left hand, for my right side of my brain, just learning to use my left hand after 3 years. Because for 3 years, from the time I had my right hand done to my left hand done, this hand I would hide down my lap. I couldn't hold a sandwich. I could eat by then with my right hand, but I couldn't hold the sandwich. But now we're to rehab, and it's Lisa's turn, and hers is so exciting because not only is she going to talk about rehab, she's also going to show you some cool tools that she has. So, all right, hit it, Lisa.
I've been working in occupational therapy for quite a few decades now, and worked in a lot of different arenas, a lot of different settings, but primarily in the outpatient setting for the last 25 years, working with orthopedic and neurological deficits. And over the years, a lot of the doctors didn't even really write referrals for essential tremors. I would get a few people in every so often through the years, and they would say, this person needs help with their handwriting. They have problems with their coordination. They have some tremors, but they never really even called it essential tremor for so long. But now, with Parkinson's and essential tremor, they called it benign tremors. And when I first met Rita, when she came in, let me backtrack. Whenever someone would come in, we had just a few options to do with those folks. Most of the time, we would work on handwriting, and I would teach them a few things of how to stabilize their arms. They had some weighted writing utensils we would practice with, some weighted eating utensils. Those are kind of hit and miss depending on what level of tremors people were experiencing at the time. So when Rita came in and she said, well, I had essential tremors, and she had this procedure, I had never heard of the focused ultrasound procedure that she had. And it was pretty exciting, and to be able to actually rehabilitate someone that had essential tremors versus just helping them along the way with a progressive problem, and then trying to find tricks of the trade to kind of help them do the best they could to be as independent as they could with all of those everyday activities that we all take for granted. The eating, the writing, the dressing. I mean, even some things she mentioned here where it's like, oh, you don't even think about if your hands are shaking and how hard is it to, sign in your name at a certain thing, or even punch in a few numbers on your phone. So all of those little bitty fine motor things become so difficult and so frustrating. That's one thing that we kind of discussed a little bit early on in my course with her, is that how much that affects your emotional aspect of your lives. You don't realize that those simple things were so frustrating. Like she said, wanted to throw her phone, you get angry, depressed, get a lot of anticipatory anxiety, just because every time you try to reach out for something, it's probably not going to be successful. You could be embarrassed, along those lines. That's where one of the things that they've been coming out with more now are looking more into that mind-body connection that we have. Instead of just doing different tasks or doing different things like that, we have to really learn and use that to our advantage about learning new different ways to calm ourselves down, to calm that system between the brain and the hands, so that we can learn how to move a little bit better. And so there are some new techniques that they're doing now, and a lot of it are what you hear, kind of the new age kind of treatments, listening to relaxing music. They have a lot of apps on your phone. You can listen to, ocean sounds or piano music, different things like that, something that's gonna calm your system down. And then doing some deep breathing exercises. She did that when you're using that fork in there. So deep breathing is something that they found effective for a lot of different reasons. So that 4 square breathing, if you know you're gonna do a task that's going to be really difficult, then you do the breathing in. You may want to tense your muscles up and then hold it for 4 counts and then blow out, and then visualize your muscles just calming and almost like you're melting a little bit. And that will sometimes calm down your whole system. And then you just kind of tell yourself, look away for a minute and say, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And then you reach out and grab that fork and eat. You have to try those techniques. Try every trick in the book that you can to calm yourself down and not be so anxious about these tasks that have been so difficult for you. There's some other relaxation techniques that they are doing now. A lot of them involve exercise. Tai Chi is a great one. There's a Qigong, some exercise videos that you can look up that involve more slow, easy, coordinated motions where you do things really slow and coordinated, and that will help reduce tremors. One thing that was new that I didn't know to help relax, especially with essential tremors, it's mostly from the elbows down for the most part, but you can get it all over your whole body, is putting a cold pack on your arms and just letting it sit there for like 15-20 minutes, especially if you have something that you're going to do that's going to involve a lot of heavy hand work. Put that on there, and there's actually been studies that have indicated that can last up to 2 hours after you put the cold pack on to help you use your hands for a longer time period. Other things are by doing some stretching exercises, and especially like the biceps, going back and forth, but when you do them slowly, easily, and you go back out, and you expand out, especially on the downswing. It's called the eccentric strengthening exercise. And you do that for your wrists, your forearms, and your elbows. Another thing to help calm your system is by doing some weight bearing. Maybe you're going to press down on the table, and then relax your muscles, and then try to use your hands to eat or take a drink. Another thing is to, if you're having frustrating time, look away, and then take a deep breath, and then go back at your task. closing your eyes, visualizing what you wanna try to accomplish. And that way, if you visualize it, close your eyes and say, okay, I'm gonna pick up that glass, or I'm gonna reach over to get that grape or something off the table, then if you already visualize it and then you just go to do that, you might find some success in that. If I forgot anything else.
Change to the pictures.
Oh,
She has a picture.
a few, and then I also have a book. So there's a lot of new things out there on the market. There is this little self-help tools that you can look up, and I have a book that I'll just pass out. And to go through a lot of different new things out there on the market that are available. Oh, one of the things that helped Rita that, with her reaching, she talked about earlier that reaching to get things, that's the worst. Well, one of the techniques to help reduce tremors is that you hold your arms in at your body. And if you may use two hands. You start taking a drink where you tuck your arms in, and then you use two hands to drink. That's one way to cut back on your tremors. So, and that's called stabilizing. So you want to stabilize your upper arms, hold your arms in, but if you can't do that, then putting on hand weights. And we worked on a few things, and some of them worked, some of them didn't, but I think the hand weight, that where you put it on the back of your hand, worked the best. And so you can put that on, and that really, when she was going to do some reaching tasks, that really helped. And you can add it, they have the wrist weights now, you can add a weight onto that. If you have to rely on that for everything you have to do, your arms may get tired, but they'll also be a lot stronger. Another technique that I used with another client, that I actually wrapped up some of this TheraBand exercise onto the back of their chair. And as they were holding on to a fork, knife, or spoon, and I tried to strategically hook it onto something so that when they're reaching against this resistance, and they actually got it on the plate, and then when they came back nice and slow because they're working against the resistance of a band, and they got their food to their mouth just a little bit easier. They have a lot of different adaptive devices. These are weighted. Those have been kind of hit or miss, but I think sometimes if you combine those with adding a little bit of weight on your arms or hands, that helps. Bracing is another one. Goes the same principle as holding your arms in. There's some braces you can put on your elbow. So if you're stabilizing your elbow, that's going to cut down tremors there. If you add just a standard one of those Velcro wrist braces, that seems to be pretty helpful if you're having a lot of hard times with any kind of tremors. That way you can just focus on the fingers. I'll pass these around. They have a lot of different, there's also a weighted compressive forearm band that wraps around the forearm, kind of like those weighted blankets do. You wrap it around your forearm, and that relaxes your forearm muscles. So there's a lot of different assistive devices in here. There's some new technologies that I'll talk about here in a minute. And if anybody's interested in anything behind, in these little pockets of the page protectors, you can grab a copy. I have about 4 or 5 copies in there if anybody's interested in that. There's the utensils in here. I have the fork or the spoon that she had that uses kind of the gyroscope, which I've never used. I was hoping she still had it so I could kind of see if that was effective for anybody else.
I threw it away.
You threw it away? Yeah. You know, the good news is that, you know, the sippy cups and the things like that are a bit embarrassing, but yeah, these Stanley cups, best thing ever for people that have tremors. And you can even, this is mine from home, but this game is an extra handle. If you had a hard time, you could put another handle on. And the straws, and the fact that they're already weighted themselves, plus they keep your drink cold. She was talking about throwing her phone. This I just use for my own convenience, but it's one of the best things that I've found is the little thing on the back of it, and you can find that they're elastic, so you don't even have to hold on to them. So if you shake, it's going to stay more stable, and it won't fall out of your hand. So you can find some of these little phone holders. This one's been great because you can use it as a stand, and you can hold on to it like this and walk. And it's magnetic. You can take it off or on if you need to, but that's something out there on the market now that's been a real help for a lot of people. As far as technology goes, there's also some wearable technology. That's one, thank you. And this one's actually had quite a few research articles written on it and some YouTube videos, and it's been pretty successful. I think these other ones I don't know much about, and so I don't know how effective they are. I do know they come with a pretty hefty price point, but I have seen that one work and cut down on people's tremors. So there's a lot of things out there now that, that can help while you're in the midst of having a lot of difficulties with essential tremors or having a hard time doing things that you can do conservatively. And then they also have these great breakthroughs now that she underwent with that focused ultrasound that pretty much got rid of what percentage would you say?
Probably 85 to 90%.
85 to 90%, yeah.
I still want swallow with my left hand.
Okay.
And you were talking about the typing.
Yes,
Back in the old days when you had a typewriter,
yes,
it worked better because there was that resistance.
right.
Where when we switched to the laptops, we had lost
A lot of resistance. There are some things where you can gauge the keyboards on how hard you press them. They have a large keyboard now. They have a mouse that kind of runs on the same principle. It has a gyroscope on it. It actually will electronically measure what degree that your tremors are occurring, and it will adjust to that. They have another mouse that will attach to the bottom of your keyboard that runs the whole length, and you put your hands on it so you stabilize your arms on the countertop, and then you kind of can move your hands back and forth like this. That's come in pretty handy. In the book that I passed around there, they also have a writing pen that you attach a pen to, and it looks like a little half bird or something, but you can keep your hand on the table to write with, so you don't have to pick up your hand or have the back of your hand up like so.
When I had my right hand down but not my left hand down, I told Dr. Chang that I learned to make all my passwords right-handed.
Oh, yeah.
So I
Oh,
could
fun.
just hit,
Yeah.
and I learned to type right-handed.
Right-handed.
So I didn't,
Yeah.
I could type pretty darn fast, left or right-handed.
Right-handed, yeah. When I was going through the rehab process with her, like she said, she hadn't really used her left hand. She learned how to do things one-handed. We had to go through that process where I said, you have to pretend, even though it's your non-dominant hand, pretend like that's the only hand you have. Put that right hand away, and then practice writing. Practice doing the things you never did with your left hand, and that's a novel task. So if you never really had written with your left hand, your non-dominant hand, that wakes up this side of the brain. And so we had to wake up that right side of the brain and give her a novel task that she probably never practiced with her left hand. And so she did some coloring and did some things like that. She brought me one, and I was really impressed that she stayed within the lines and doing that with her left non-dominant hand. And yeah.
That was a good note.
So anyway, it's been a real pleasure working with Rita and learning about a little bit more about what's out there now for essential tremors and all the different technologies and the different treatment techniques that are kind of encompassing your whole life, your work, rest, and play, all your activities. And to know that there's also some other high-level medical treatments that you can also take advantage of between the focused ultrasound or the deep brain stimulator, which they've had that around for quite a while, and some people with Parkinson's have actually had that procedure done before. But yeah, so I really appreciative to get to know Rita and really everybody should be appreciative of how much she's put in and been the spokesperson for the National ET Foundation. And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Jennifer Chang. If you watched it, there's a video with her, and she's just very eloquent in speaking about the focused ultrasound treatment she performs. And I've worked with other patients with other conditions with her from KU Medical Center, and I'm kind of proud of that fact because that's my alma mater too. So go KU. I'm gonna hand it back to Rita now. So if you have any questions, just grab me afterwards.
Did you want to show many of those other?
Oh, yeah. There's a scoop bowl. Oh, this is something that comes in super handy. And I didn't talk about the kitchen yet. I need to talk about the kitchen. This is Dyson. It's super, super sticky.
Which one?
And it sticks when you put a plate on. It's not going anywhere. And you can also use it for opening up containers, holding on to things so things don't fly out of your hand. It comes in big rolls. You can use as much as you want. It also helps you if you put it on the bottom of a jar and on the top of a jar. You can open up those containers that way. This is a rocker knife. And it works pretty handy if you have tremors. You can press it down, hold your arm in, press it down, rock back and forth instead of sawing motion. In the book, there's one, it's a bilateral rocking knife. So if you held your arms in like this and use the cutting board, there's a cutting board you can stick to the counter. It actually has stainless steel nails that pop up through it. You can put your food on it, keep your food or potato or a tomato from flying out of the way. And then they have cut resistant gloves, but you can rock that knife using 2 hands. And that way you can at least cut some food and be a little safer in the kitchen without worrying about cutting yourself or burning yourself. They have silicone oven mitts too that you can use to get things in and out of the oven. You can use your forearms, stabilize it against your body. So there's a lot of different tricks like that to do. And what's the other thing with the kitchen? Oh, cut resistant gloves. They actually have those. Those actually work. If anybody sees those online or on Amazon, I actually worked with a guy that had an amputated finger, and I just needed to find a finger sleeve because he was worried about damaging his finger because he didn't quite have all the feeling back in it from his finger injury, and I wanted to cut it shorter, and I took some pair of sharpest scissors I had in the clinic, and it would not cut through. So those work. So, all right, I think that's about all I have here for those. So, all right, I'll
Our
give
new
it back to you.
cheerleader for Essential we're continuous research. That's what's happening with BT. The fact that it is getting known out there and there is awareness. I want to give a shout out to the International Essential Tremor Foundation. They have support research continuously, several grants a year. Plus, they also give out scholarships to people who have essential tremors but want to go to school or to college. They have what's called the Tremor Talk magazine, and this is a special one of mine because actually my article got in here. So, but these are great. Now, if you would like to order these magazines, they're part of the foundation, so it's $30 a year, and the paperwork's in there. I wanted to show you one more thing up here. I know QR codes are sometimes the bane of somebody who has tremors, but if you have somebody who can help you, if you can do this QR code, it lists 3 of these pamphlets that are in here, and they are really good. Lots of super good information. And I don't think you didn't mention these, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay. These are medical alert cards that come from IETF too, and they are so great to keep on hand in the car. If you have an accident, I had an accident that was very minor, and yet it shook me up so bad I couldn't write, and the policeman was able to write my report for me. But it's great to have and to explain why your hands are shaking. And it could even affect how you walk, so it could make it bad for if they decide to DUI check. Thank you, husband. Well, the takeaway I have for today is you are not alone. Don't feel alone like I did for many, many years. Online, there's an essential tremor awareness group. I mentioned that where I see where young people are having a hard time getting jobs or keeping jobs. I just saw one today. If you don't feel comfortable adding your comments or feelings to that, just read what others are saying, and they're from all over the world. And we just noticed yesterday, there's an essential tremor awareness youth group now. So I think that will be good for young people who, especially job-related careers. To me, that was a biggie. So that's why I'm in books, or it was in books. Okay, what questions do you have? Did I overwhelm you? Yes, John.
Is there any pain associated with the tremor?
Not really, no. You just shake. And, but you can't grasp. And, okay, for example, if you have a little plastic cup, you know, those cute little cups they put fruit juice in or punch in, you go to grasp those, you crush it. So there's a feeling that you can't control how hard you have, how much power you have. So, yeah.
You mentioned like the accident you had with driving, like how does that affect driving and your reflexes, your driving with this?
I never had a problem unless somebody tells me. It's not a fine motor skill, and I had a friend who had ALS, and she told me they want me to stop driving, and she said, but I tell them that's one thing I can still do. And even with essential tremors, you don't have the fine motor skill, except it was really weird when I go to hit the turn signals. Those were kind of, or the garage door opener, it was down that, and so that was something. Was I that bad of a driver?
No comment.
But not because of the essential terms.
Yeah. Sometimes I have to open my eyes, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
You've been to a neurosurgeon at KU School of Medicine. Is there anyone local here in Wichita that's,
They
taking
are
this as a
doing
specialty?
not the focus ultrasound here, but they are doing DBS. And that's on the east side of Wichita. Ruthie, do you know what the name of that clinic is?
Oh, yeah, it's in a neurologist consultant.
Yeah. Neurologist consultants of Kansas.
I have one more question for you.
Sure.
I'm one of 8 children.
Okay.
3 of my brothers have essential tremors. And I wondered, how did people approach you? Like, did they ask you about it? My brothers are very closed about talking about it. I don't even think they've approached their physician about doing something, and that there are meds available. But how did you deal with that? And
Well, right early on, my mom was very open about helping me. The only problem, our doctor wasn't really helpful at that time. We were talking 1966. So, nothing was going on back then. I had a super great bunch of friends at school. Even some of them protected me from that. So it's kind of like it was so much a part of my life. I don't even know, I mean, I just had a constant, I mean, I'd be in the store and somebody'd say, what's wrong with you? Or, I mean, the worst was like, what kind of illegal drugs have you been taking lately? To me, it's like, and that's why I would get mad. I thought
I think the eating, you talked about just relationships and different, experiences in life and not being able to get the job. I mean, my brothers, 2 of them can't work now. One was a welder, he cannot work at all. But I want to approach them with, here's some good new information. And unfortunately, they live in mid-Missouri rural, so I don't, I'm just trying to find them resources. So,
I don't know what the process is to getting referred from your doctor to KU Med. Seriously, I call them directly. But with this paperwork, maybe these pamphlets would be a start.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I was on a cruise last September and not knowing too much and I think it's just better to be open and first get the right diagnosis. You want to see some, because there could be some other diagnoses that you maybe would have. We had a comedian that was 60 years old that was on our cruise, and he immediately, I mean, he's out in public, people are going to notice, so he just nipped it in the bud and said, hey, I just got diagnosed with if you see me grabbing my hand or see my hand shaking funny, I was just diagnosed with essential tremor. And then we saw him on the dance floor, just cutting the rug later, so it didn't affect his gross motor skills. But I think just being upfront and just putting it right out there, but then first giving your brothers the information and then have them
I
get
think,
tested.
well, they're all over 60, and it really hasn't occurred until about the last 10 years. But I think they're embarrassed. I think that you mentioned that, and that it's been difficult losing jobs that, they did for years and years. So thank you. I appreciate your honesty and good ideas.
And mine didn't get worse until I was about 50. So then it did get much worse than that. One thing Dr. Ching I heard her telling while I was under this, because you're not out, you're awake while you're doing this. And I heard some nurse ask her, how's the oldest person that you worked with? And she said, Oh, I've done people in their 90s, so it's still hope. Oh, go ahead.
I'm Rita's much older sister. I was the bride in the picture, originally there. And a couple of years ago, I noticed a shakiness kind of in my chest. So I told my doctor, and I have just recently moved here to Wichita. So I've had a new doctor. And he sent me to a neurologist out east, which, gosh, his name just goes, ooh, Jordan Parker.
He came
Bowl.
in and said, "Hi, I'm Parker."
Yeah, he came in, and Rita went with me for my first visit. And, we didn't mention tremors at first, but he started sending me through these writing the circle thing, which I could do. And finally, as the appointment went on, we told him about tremors being in our family. I mean, we have cousins too, this same problem, more with their hands. And so it was really, everything was crossed off the list except because tremors, I had read in her information, it can affect the voice. So he put me on Premodone, which helped greatly in the tremors in my chest. Once in a while, I'm like talking now, but I was feeling those without talking. And so, I went to a gal at St. Teresa too for some therapy and stuff, and.
Was that voice therapy?
Yeah,
Voice.
and, so it was kind of new for her, and, she said, now, they could just give me something to remember names, I don't know. But, we found that, if I breathe deep before I start to talk, and I talk slower, and, the more I talk, the better my voice settles in. And, hate to say living alone, I go a lot of days not saying much to anybody, cause we text back and forth, Betty and I, and, stuff, so I'm not verbally, talking. But I have to work at it and stuff, so, but I figure I'm plenty old, so I don't, and I go to a sewing group, and I just one day explained to them, this is why my voice sounds funny, cause it sounds way different than it used to. And I can't sing, which I hate that. Not that I was good, but I love to sing. So, anyway, it can affect different parts, cause I have no problems with my hands. So.
Yeah, and I'd say too, when Rita was little, the only time I noticed it, I'm her older sister, she would shake when she opened birthday presents or Christmas presents. Well, I didn't think she was 6 and I was 10 or whatever, 10 and 14, whatever. And so I never thought anything of it, I just thought she was excited.
I was.
And so I guess too, if you notice somebody and, you probably ought to say something, but again, like you said, years make a lot of difference because now there's more research and people are more aware.
I think once I went to Dr. Scott when I came back from England and found out what it was much easier to open up to everybody. plus Rebecca, we had to take her in to be checked, and so that helped a lot. I wanna thank you all. Thank you to this wonderful lady here, our new cheerleader, and to this staff and Wichita Public Library, the NEA, Big Read, what a privilege to be working with them. And International Essential Tremor Foundation, I can't say enough about them, they're always there for us. They have an office up in Lenexa, it's very easy to find. They're always welcoming to guests if you go in there. Not a big place, but they will accommodate you. Goddard Public Library, they helped us first just starting to get the PowerPoint working. Dr. Ching, I'm just so grateful that she picked this as her career. I asked her why she picked this, and she said because the results were immediate. And that, to me, she is the best. My family for helping me when I did tell the world that, so they weren't making fun of me anymore from being 12 or 10 and 14. I don't think anybody in our family ever made fun of that. And that guy over there, my husband, because heaven knew I needed him. And thank you all for attending. I really appreciate you being here. If you have any further questions, I didn't have any cards left, so I have nothing to give you. But you can always check with Tremor Talk and see what's available in here, as they are the true experts. So thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks everybody for coming today. There are some forms, feedback forms in the back over here against this wall if you'd like to fill out a feedback form about today's program. You can just leave completed forms on the table. I'll collect them and make sure.
Could you tell them about the others that's going on?
Yes. Also, right now, immediately over in the conference center, rooms A and B, there is another event related to the Big Read. It is a panel discussion on representations of disability in arts and media. And so it's going to be a really great discussion.